Every nation on Earth is in debt. The United States, $38 trillion, the highest it's ever been. Europe, 14 trillion. Japan, 9 trillion. Even the richest countries, oil empires, export giants, all owe massive sums. So here's the question. If everyone owes, who gets paid? This is Secret Ledger, where money meets power, meets history. That's the question nobody asks, because the answer reveals something they don't want you to understand. The world doesn't owe money to anyone. It owes it to itself. But that doesn't mean everyone benefits equally. To understand how we reach this point, a planet buried under $315 trillion of total debt, nearly 3 times the size of the global economy, we need to go back. 1694, London. England is at war with France, and the crown is running out of gold. The king needs money desperately, so he makes a deal with merchants. Give us gold now, and we'll pay you interest forever. Backed by taxes, backed by the power of the state. To manage this arrangement, they created something revolutionary, the Bank of England. For the first time in history, a government could spend money it didn't have yet, and in return, lenders received something priceless, a promise that could be bought, sold, traded. This was the birth of the government bond, the seed of everything that came after. France copied it. The Netherlands refined it. The newly independent United States adopted it to fund their revolution. National debt stopped being a sign of failure. It became a badge of credibility. The ability to borrow became the ability to rule. Empires once conquered land to extract gold. Now they issued bonds to extract interest. The battlefield became the balance sheet. Fast forward 3 centuries. Debt has become the world's dominant export. Global borrowing increases by $1 trillion every 100 days. Every country owes. Every bank lends. Every citizen, through taxes, savings, pensions, is both debtor and creditor. But who holds the other end of the rope? Let's follow the money. Let's start with the United States. Because American debt isn't just national, it's global. Out of $38 trillion, roughly half is publicly held, meaning it's owed to investors, not to other parts of government. Now, here's where it gets interesting. 2/3 of those investors are American. Banks, pension funds, mutual funds, insurance companies, and the Federal Reserve itself. The remaining third, about $9 trillion, sits in foreign hands. Japan holds the most, around $1 trillion. China, about $800 billion. So when politicians say we're in debt to China, they're technically correct, but China holds only 2% of America's total debt. Most of the debt America owes is to America. The Treasury issues bonds. Banks and funds buy them. The Federal Reserve often buys them back, creating new dollars in the process. Americans pay taxes that fund interest on those bonds, which then flow into American retirement accounts. It's a closed loop, a circular mirror. The debt is real, but the creditor is mostly a reflection of the same system. And this circularity isn't just American, it's planetary. Japan lends to the US through treasuries. The US lends to Europe through the IMF. Europe lends to developing nations through the World Bank. Developing nations lend back by parking reserves in Western bonds. It's a global game of hot potato, except the potato is made of promises. Every country holds someone else's IOU. Every promise is secured by another promise. It's like a poker table where every player borrowed chips from the next, and the only rule keeping the game alive is that nobody stands up. But there's a fourth layer, the most powerful of all: the markets themselves. Behind every government bond sits a web of institutions, hedge funds managing trillions, pension funds controlling retirement futures, sovereign wealth funds, central banks. They are the true arbiters of credit. They decide which nations borrow cheaply and which will pay a premium for survival. When they lose confidence, currencies collapse. Governments fall. Entire economies restructure overnight. Democracy decides who governs, but markets decide who survives. And the ultimate market maker, the modern high priest of this system, is the central bank. Central banks don't just manage debt, they manufacture it. Every time the Federal Reserve or European Central Bank buys government bonds, they create new money. Out of nothing, the liability of one balance sheet becomes the asset of another. Every dollar in your wallet represents a unit of debt somewhere else. There is no such thing as debt-free money. Every coin, every bill, every digital dollar has an IOU engraved invisibly on its surface. For decades, this loop sustained itself through one thing: confidence. As long as investors believe governments will pay interest, even if never the principal, the machine keeps turning. But what happens when confidence wavers? We've seen it before. Greece, 2010. Government debt became unpayable. Bondholders panicked. Yields spiked. The European Central Bank and IMF intervened. But their rescue came with a price: austerity. Tax hikes, spending cuts, mass unemployment. For an entire generation, bailout became another word for sacrifice. Argentina. Repeated defaults turned debt into a national curse. Sri Lanka. Fuel shortages and political collapse when foreign currency ran out. When the system breaks, the creditors suddenly become visible. The IMF, the rating agencies, the anonymous bondholders who hold entire nations by the throat. And yet, even after collapse, the same logic restarts. New loans replace old ones. Old debts are restructured. The machine resets with a new name on the same balance sheet. Because in the 21st century, debt isn't designed to be repaid. It's designed to be rolled over forever. Governments today don't plan to pay off their debt. Not now, not ever. That's not a conspiracy. It's policy. When you or I take a loan, we're expected to repay the principal. But governments operate differently. They treat debt like a subscription service, issuing new bonds to pay off old ones. A process economists call refinancing. Interest becomes the real product, the rent charged for stability. The United States will never clear its $38 trillion. It will refinance it forever. Japan has rolled over its debt for decades, now exceeding 250% of GDP. And yet their bond yields remain near zero. Why? Because investors aren't waiting to be repaid. They're waiting to renew the deal. For them, government debt is the safest collateral in existence. A U.S. Treasury bond isn't viewed as a liability. It's an asset, the foundation of global markets. Pension funds hold it. Banks use it as security. Central banks treat it as money. The system depends on governments never paying off their debt, because if they did, the world would lose its most trusted financial instrument. Imagine if Washington paid off every last dollar. Banks and funds worldwide would suddenly lose their most stable asset. The dollar supply would shrink dramatically, triggering deflation, collapse. Paying off the debt would destroy the very thing that makes the economy function. So governments do the opposite. They keep issuing more, not recklessly, but rhythmically. The debt becomes a kind of heartbeat for capitalism itself, pulsing through every pension, every mortgage, every market on earth. And that's why, when politicians talk about balancing the budget or paying down the national debt, they're selling an illusion. The goal isn't to eliminate debt, it's to keep it sustainable, serviceable, and desirable enough that the system never stops believing in it. Because once belief fades, the numbers stop mattering. Confidence collapses, interest rates spike, and the economy built entirely on rolling promises grinds to a halt. That's the real secret of sovereign debt. The plan was never to pay it back. The plan is to keep the world believing it will. It's a closed loop of trust, and as long as that trust holds, the numbers can stretch indefinitely. But trust isn't evenly distributed. When we say we owe it to ourselves, that's only half true. Interest payments don't flow equally through society. They flow upward, from taxpayers and workers to the institutions and investors that hold the debt. Debt isn't just a transfer between countries. It's a transfer between classes. Global inequality and global indebtedness rise together. The system rewards those who own debt and punishes those who merely pay it. Creditors aren't villains. Debtors aren't victims. They're two sides of the same engine. The problem is what happens when the engine runs out of fuel, when new borrowing can't keep pace with old promises. That's when the question, who's the creditor, stops being abstract and starts being personal. Because at the top of this pyramid, there isn't one face to blame. It isn't China. It isn't Wall Street. It isn't the IMF. It's all of them. And us. The modern financial system has turned debt itself into money. Governments issue it. Banks multiply it. Investors trade it. Citizens depend on it. The line between debtor and creditor has blurred beyond recognition. Debt once meant bondage. Today, it means balance. But if that balance ever tips, if confidence breaks, the illusion ends, and we'll remember what debt really is, a promise that can't be kept forever. This is Secret Ledger. If this gave you a new perspective, hit subscribe. The truth is in the numbers. We'll show you where to look.